The grand ballroom of the Riverside Hotel buzzed with excitement as nearly 300 guests gathered for the annual charity gala. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over elegantly dressed attendees who mingled between silent auction tables and champagne stations. The evening promised to raise funds for the local children's hospital, but nobody knew it would become the most talked-about event in the town's history. William Henderson stood near the back of the room, adjusting his black tie nervously. At 32, he worked as a senior accountant at Morrison & Associates, a respected firm downtown. His colleagues often described him as quiet and methodical, someone who preferred spreadsheets to social gatherings. Tonight felt different, though. He had information that could change everything. And the weight of that knowledge made his hands shake slightly as he reached for his water glass. Across the room, Camilla Thornton commanded attention at the center of a growing circle of admirers. Her emerald green gown sparkled under the lights as she gestured gracefully while speaking. As the newly appointed director of the Children's Hope Foundation, she had quickly become the face of charitable giving in their community. Local newspapers featured her regularly, and the mayor often praised her dedication during city council meetings. "Ladies and gentlemen," Camilla's voice carried clearly across the room as she tapped her champagne flute with a silver spoon. "Thank you all for being here tonight. Your generous hearts and open wallets will help us reach our goal of building a new pediatric wing at Riverside Children's Hospital." The crowd erupted in applause. William watched as people leaned forward, hanging on her every word. She had that effect on people, an ability to make them believe in her vision completely. "I know many of you have heard about the challenges we've faced this year," Camilla continued, her voice taking on a more serious tone. "There have been whispers, questions about where your donations go. I want to address these concerns directly." William's pulse quickened. He knew exactly what those whispers were about, because he had been the one quietly investigating them for the past 6 months. Some people have suggested that administrative costs are too high, or that funds aren't being used properly, Camilla said, shaking her head with what appeared to be genuine sadness. "These accusations hurt, especially when they come from people who claim to support our mission." She paused dramatically, looking around the room with tears glistening in her eyes. "I want everyone here to know that 95% of every dollar donated goes directly to helping sick children. Our books are completely transparent, and we welcome any audit from qualified professionals." The crowd murmured approvingly. Several people nodded their heads in support. William felt his stomach tighten as he watched this performance unfold. "In fact," Camilla continued, her voice growing stronger, "I have documentation right here that proves our financial integrity." She held up a thick folder. Bank statements, expense reports, and audit results from 3 separate accounting firms. Anyone who wants to see them is welcome to review them after my presentation. More applause filled the room. William saw Margaret Foster, the hospital's chief administrator, wiping away tears. Dr. Richard Blake, who ran the pediatric department, was clapping enthusiastically. These were good people who believed they were supporting a worthy cause. William pulled out his phone and checked the time. In exactly 20 minutes, he would have his chance to speak. The gala organizers had given him a slot to present findings from the independent financial review that several concerned donors had secretly commissioned. What Camilla didn't know was that William had been the lead investigator on that review, working nights and weekends for months to trace where the money really went. "Now, I'd like to share some exciting news," Camilla announced. "Thanks to your incredible generosity over the past year, we've raised over $2 million for the Pediatric Wing Project." The applause was thunderous. People were actually standing up, cheering for what they believed was an amazing accomplishment. William's jaw clenched. He knew that less than $400,000 of that money had actually made it to the hospital. The rest had been diverted through a complex web of shell companies and fake vendors that all led back to accounts controlled by Camilla and her associates. "The groundbreaking ceremony is scheduled for next month," Camilla continued. I invite all of you to join us as we literally build hope for the children of our community. As she spoke, William noticed Thomas Mitchell, the foundation's board chairman, nodding approvingly from the front row. Thomas was a good man who had lost his own grandson to leukemia 2 years ago. His involvement with the foundation was deeply personal, and he trusted Camilla completely. The betrayal would devastate him. Before we move on to tonight's auction, Camilla said, I want to address one more thing. There are people in this room tonight who have been spreading rumors about our organization. People who lack the courage to make accusations publicly, but whisper behind closed doors. William felt every muscle in his body tense. She was looking directly at him now, though he doubted anyone else noticed. To those individuals, I say this. If you have concerns about how we operate, bring them forward. Don't hide in shadows and spread poison. Our work is too important for petty politics and jealousy. The crowd turned to look around, trying to identify who she might be talking about. William felt dozens of pairs of eyes scanning the room, though none settled on him for more than a moment. Dr. Sarah Chen, who had become one of the foundation's biggest supporters after they helped fund treatment for several of her patients, stepped forward. Camilla, I think we all know you've been unfairly targeted by people who are jealous of what you've accomplished. Please don't let them discourage you. That's right, called out Mayor Patricia Wells from across the room. This community is lucky to have someone with your passion and integrity leading such important work. William watched as the crowd rallied around Camilla, their support growing stronger with each passing moment. She had positioned herself as the victim of unfair attacks, which made his upcoming revelation even more necessary, but also more dangerous. Thank you all for your faith in me and in our mission, Camilla said, her voice thick with emotion. Now let's focus on what really matters, helping children get the medical care they deserve. As the crowd began to disperse toward the auction tables, William checked his phone again. 15 minutes until his presentation. He had copies of bank records, emails, and vendor contracts that would expose the truth about where the money really went. He also had photographs of the luxury cars, designer clothes, and expensive jewelry that Camilla had purchased while claiming to live modestly on her foundation salary. His phone buzzed with a text message from Janet Morrison, his boss at the accounting firm. Are you sure you want to do this tonight? Once you present those findings publicly, there's no going back. William typed his response quickly. These people deserve to know the truth. They trusted her with their money and their hearts. Another message appeared immediately. Just remember that powerful people don't like being exposed. Be careful. William understood the warning. Camilla had connections throughout the city government and business community. She sat on several boards and had cultivated relationships with influential people who wouldn't appreciate learning they had been fooled. As he watched her work the room, accepting congratulations and posing for photos, William felt a mixture of anger and sadness. She was genuinely talented at inspiring people and could have done amazing things if she had been honest. Instead, she had chosen to exploit people's generosity for personal gain. The auction began with smaller items, spa packages, restaurant gift certificates, and local artwork. The energy in the room remained high as people bid enthusiastically, still riding the wave of emotion from Camilla's speech. William moved closer to the front of the room, positioning himself near the microphone that speakers used to address the crowd. His folder of evidence felt heavy in his hands, weighted down by months of careful investigation and the knowledge of how many people would be hurt by what he was about to reveal. Ladies and gentlemen, the auctioneer announced, we're going to pause the bidding for a moment while William Henderson from Morrison & Associates presents some information that several donors have requested. The room grew quiet as William approached the microphone. He could see Camilla's face from across the room, and for the first time that evening she looked uncertain. Her confident smile had been replaced by a look of concern as she tried to figure out what was about to happen. William cleared his throat and looked out at the crowd of expectant faces. These people had opened their hearts and wallets because they wanted to help sick children. They deserved to know the truth about where their money had actually gone. "Good evening, everyone," William began, his voice steadier than he had expected. "I know this is unusual, interrupting the festivities like this, but I have information that I believe you all have the right to hear." The room was completely silent now. Even the wait staff had stopped moving as everyone focused on the nervous accountant at the microphone. "For the past 6 months, I've been conducting an independent financial review of the Children's Hope Foundation at the request of several concerned donors," William continued. "What I discovered is very different from what you've heard tonight." He could see Camilla pushing through the crowd, trying to reach the microphone, but the packed room made quick movement impossible. "The foundation has indeed raised over $2 million in the past year," William said. "However, less than 20% of that money has actually reached the Children's Hospital or any other charitable purpose." A murmur went through the crowd as people tried to process what they were hearing. "The rest of the money has been systematically diverted through fake vendors, inflated administrative costs, and direct transfers to personal accounts controlled by foundation leadership." The murmur became a buzz of shocked voices as the implications of William's words began to sink in. He could see Thomas Mitchell staring at him in disbelief, while Dr. Blake looked like he had been physically struck. "I have documentation proving these allegations," William continued, holding up his folder. "Bank records, email correspondence, and vendor contracts that tell a very different story than what you've heard tonight." Camilla finally reached the front of the crowd, her face flushed with anger. "This is outrageous," she called out. "How dare you interrupt this event with unsubstantiated accusations?" But William wasn't finished yet. The truth was finally coming out, and there was no stopping it now. The tension in the ballroom became suffocating as Camilla forced her way to the microphone, her elegant facade cracking under pressure. Her green gown, which had looked so stunning moments before, now seemed garish under the harsh spotlight of accusation. "Ladies and gentlemen, please don't listen to this man," Camilla said, her voice shaking with what appeared to be righteous indignation. "William Henderson has been harassing our organization for months with baseless claims because we refused to hire his accounting firm for our annual audit." William felt his face burn with anger at the blatant lie, but he remained calm. He had expected her to attack his credibility, and he was prepared for it. "That's completely false," William replied firmly into the microphone. "I have no financial interest in this foundation whatsoever. I volunteered my time for this investigation because concerned donors asked for an independent review." "Concerned donors?" Camilla laughed, but it sounded forced and hollow. "More like jealous competitors trying to damage our reputation because they can't stand our success." Dr. Blake stepped forward from the crowd, confusion written across his face. "William, these are very serious allegations. Do you have actual proof of wrongdoing?" "Yes, Dr. Blake, I do," William answered, grateful for the opportunity to present his evidence rather than engage in a shouting match with Camilla. "I have bank statements showing that payments to supposed medical equipment vendors were actually transferred to shell companies. I have email exchanges where foundation staff discussed how to create fake invoices. I have photographs of purchases made with foundation credit cards that have nothing to do with helping children." The crowd pressed closer, everyone straining to hear every word. William could see cell phones coming out as people began recording the confrontation. "Show us," called out Margaret Foster, the hospital administrator. "If you have proof, show it to us right now." William opened his folder and pulled out a stack of enlarged photographs. "These are images taken last month of a Ferrari purchased with foundation funds and registered to a company owned by Camilla Thornton's brother-in-law." He held up the first photo, which clearly showed a red Ferrari in the driveway of an expensive home. The license plate was visible, and he had documentation showing it was purchased through one of the foundation's fake vendors. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Several people moved closer to get a better look at the photograph. "That's ridiculous," Camilla protested. "That car belongs to a legitimate vendor who provides transportation services for families visiting sick children." "Really?" William asked, pulling out another document. "Then why is it registered to Coastal Luxury Motors, a company that exists only on paper and shares a mailing address with your personal residence?" Camilla's face went pale, but she quickly recovered. "These documents could be easily fabricated. Anyone with basic computer skills could create fake paperwork." Thomas Mitchell, the board chairman, finally spoke up. His voice was quiet but carried clearly across the silent room. "Camilla, these are very specific allegations. If they're false, it should be easy enough to disprove them." "Of course I can disprove them," Camilla said quickly. "But I shouldn't have to defend myself against someone who's clearly trying to destroy our organization out of spite." William pulled out another set of documents. "Here are bank statements from the Foundation's primary account. They show regular transfers to companies called Riverside Medical Supplies, Children's Care Equipment, and Pediatric Solutions." He held up the papers so the crowd could see them. "Each of these companies was created specifically to receive Foundation money. They have no physical addresses, no employees, and no actual inventory. They exist solely to funnel donated money into personal accounts." Dr. Chen pushed forward, her face showing a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Are you saying that the money we donated for medical equipment never actually bought any equipment?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," William confirmed. "The few legitimate purchases the Foundation made were small amounts designed to create a paper trail. The vast majority of your donations were stolen." The crowd was becoming agitated now. Voices were raised as people demanded answers. Someone shouted, "Where's the $2 million?" while another person called out, "We trusted you." Camilla raised her hands, trying to regain control of the situation. "Please, everyone, calm down. This man is trying to destroy everything we've worked for based on documents that could be completely fabricated." "Then explain this," William said, pulling out a printed email exchange. "These are communications between you and your assistant discussing how to create invoices for services that were never provided." He began reading from the printout. "From Camilla Thornton to Jessica Walsh, dated March 15th. Make sure the invoice from Pediatric Solutions matches the amount we need to transfer. Use the same format as last time, but change the equipment description to make it look different." The crowd erupted. People were shouting questions and accusations. Several board members were huddled together, speaking in urgent whispers. "That email is fake!" Camilla screamed over the noise. "Anyone can create fake emails!" William had anticipated this defense too. He pulled out his phone and connected it to the presentation screen that had been set up for the auction. "These emails came directly from the Foundation's mail server, which your organization provided access to during the investigation." The screen lit up with the email interface, showing the same exchange he had just read aloud. The timestamps, server information, and metadata were all visible, making fabrication nearly impossible. Mayor Wells stepped forward, her face stern. "Camilla, if these allegations are true, this is a criminal matter. We need to get law enforcement involved immediately." "They're not true," Camilla insisted, but her voice was becoming more desperate. "This is all an elaborate setup designed to destroy me and the Foundation." William looked out at the crowd of shocked faces. These people had trusted Camilla with their money and their faith in helping children. The betrayal was devastating to witness. "There's more," William said quietly, and the room fell silent again. "The Foundation has been claiming to pay for medical treatments for specific children. You've all received updates about how your donations helped little Sarah with her heart surgery, or how you funded Tommy's cancer treatment." He paused, letting the weight of what he was about to say settle over the room. "Those children are real, and they did receive treatment. But their medical bills were paid by insurance and government programs, not by your donations. The foundation simply took credit for treatments that were already covered. The silence that followed was deafening. William could see tears in people's eyes as they realized the full scope of the deception. Dr. Blake's voice was barely a whisper when he spoke. "Are you saying that none of our donations actually helped those children?" "I'm saying that those children would have received the same treatment, whether the foundation existed or not," William answered sadly. "Your generosity was exploited to create a false sense of accomplishment while the money went elsewhere." Thomas Mitchell suddenly looked much older than his 68 years. "Camilla, please tell me this isn't true. Please tell me that you didn't use my grandson's memory to steal from good people." For a moment, Camilla's mask slipped completely. William saw raw panic in her eyes as she realized that her carefully constructed web of lies was collapsing around her. "Thomas, you have to believe me," she pleaded. "Everything I've done has been for the children. Yes, there might be some irregularities in the paperwork, but that's just because we move so fast to help families in crisis." "Irregularities." Margaret Foster's voice was ice cold. "You're calling the theft of nearly $2 million an irregularity?" The crowd was pressing closer now, and William could feel the anger building. He worried that the situation might turn ugly if people lost control of their emotions. "I think we should turn this matter over to the police," Mayor Wells announced. "This needs to be investigated properly by qualified authorities." "Wait," called out a voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see Detective Ray Morrison, William's uncle, walking through the crowd. He was off duty, but had attended the gala with his wife. "I've been listening to this conversation, and I think everyone needs to know that the police have been investigating the Children's Hope Foundation for the past 3 weeks, Detective Morrison announced. "We received anonymous tips about financial irregularities and have been building a case." Camilla's face went white. She looked around the room like a trapped animal, searching for an escape route. "In fact," Detective Morrison continued, "we've been waiting for the right moment to make arrests. This presentation has provided us with additional evidence that corroborates our investigation." That's when Camilla made her fatal mistake. Instead of continuing to deny the charges or demanding a lawyer, she pointed directly at William and screamed, "He's been working with the police to set me up. This whole thing is a conspiracy." The crowd turned to stare at William, confusion on their faces. If he had been working with the police all along, that would certainly change the nature of his investigation. "Actually," Detective Morrison said calmly, "William contacted us only last week when his investigation uncovered evidence of criminal activity. Before that, he was conducting an independent review at the request of concerned donors. But the damage was done." Camilla had just admitted that she knew William was investigating her, which contradicted her earlier claims that his accusations were baseless and unexpected. William saw the moment when Camilla realized what she had just said. The color drained from her face, and for the first time that evening, she was speechless. The ballroom fell into stunned silence as Camilla stood frozen at the microphone, finally understanding that her own words had trapped her. Her elaborate lies were unraveling faster than she could weave new ones, and everyone in the room could see the panic in her eyes. William felt an unexpected surge of satisfaction, but it wasn't the vindictive pleasure he had imagined. Instead, it was relief that the truth was finally coming out and these good people would no longer be deceived. That's when something unexpected happened. Despite the gravity of the situation, despite the anger and betrayal surrounding him, William began to smile. It started small, just a slight upturn at the corners of his mouth. But it grew steadily as he watched Camilla struggle to find words that could somehow salvage her crumbling facade. The smile became a chuckle, and the chuckle became something more. Before he could stop himself, William Henderson burst into genuine laughter. The sound was so unexpected in the tense atmosphere that every head in the room turned toward him. His laughter wasn't cruel or mocking, but rather the kind of relieved, slightly hysterical laughter that comes when an enormous weight is suddenly lifted from someone's shoulders. "I'm sorry," William said, trying to compose himself but still grinning widely. "It's just that for months I've been so worried about how to tell everyone the truth, so concerned about having enough evidence, so afraid that people wouldn't believe me. And now she's just told you everything you need to know." He gestured toward Camilla, who was still standing speechlessly at the microphone. "She knew I was investigating her. She knew the police were involved. Yet 30 minutes ago, she stood in front of all of you claiming that 95% of donations went to help children, that her books were completely transparent, and that anyone questioning her was just spreading baseless rumors." The crowd began to murmur as the full implications sank in. If Camilla had known about the investigation, then her passionate speech denying any wrongdoing wasn't the response of an innocent person defending herself against false accusations. It was a calculated performance designed to manipulate her audience one final time. Dr. Chen spoke first, her voice shaking with anger. "So when you stood up there talking about transparency and inviting audits, you already knew that audits were happening and finding evidence of fraud?" Camilla opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. For the first time in years, the woman who had charmed an entire community into trusting her had nothing to say. Thomas Mitchell stepped forward, and William could see tears streaming down the older man's face. "Camilla, I brought you into this organization because I believed in you. I thought you shared my passion for helping children like my grandson. How could you do this?" The broken trust in Thomas's voice seemed to affect Camilla more than all the accusations and evidence combined. She finally found her voice, but it came out as a whisper. "Thomas, I never meant for it to go this far. It started small, just borrowing a little money that I planned to pay back. But then the foundation grew so quickly, and there were so many opportunities, and I thought I could manage everything without anyone getting hurt." "Borrowing?" Margaret Foster's voice cut through the ballroom like a blade. "You stole nearly $2 million from sick children. You looked parents in the eye and told them their donations were helping their kids, while you bought luxury cars and jewelry." William watched as Camilla's carefully constructed world collapsed completely. The elegant, confident woman who had commanded the room just an hour ago now looked small and defeated. Detective Morrison moved through the crowd, approaching Camilla with professional calm. "Ms. Thornton, I think it would be best if you came with me. We have some questions that need to be answered downtown." "Wait," Camilla said desperately, looking around the room for some source of support. "I can explain everything. I can pay the money back. We can fix this without destroying the foundation and all the good work we've done." "What good work?" Dr. Blake asked sadly. "According to William's investigation, no good work was actually done. The children who received treatment would have gotten it anyway. The medical equipment we thought was purchased never existed. The programs we celebrated never helped anyone." William felt his earlier laughter fade as he watched the devastating impact of these revelations on people who had genuinely wanted to help. Their generosity had been exploited, and their trust had been betrayed in the worst possible way. "There's something else everyone should know," Detective Morrison announced. "Our investigation has uncovered evidence that this scheme extends beyond just the Children's Hope Foundation. Ms. Thornton has been involved in similar fraudulent activities with at least 3 other charitable organizations over the past 5 years. The crowd erupted again as people realized they had been victimized by a professional con artist rather than a passionate advocate who had simply made some poor choices. "Other charities?" Mayor Wells demanded. "What other charities?" "The Veterans Support Network, Save Our Seniors, and the Community Education Fund," Detective Morrison replied. "All of them followed the same pattern. Legitimate charitable purposes used as cover for systematic theft through fake vendors and inflated administrative costs." William felt sick as he thought about all the people who had been deceived across multiple organizations. Veterans who thought their donations were helping fellow soldiers, elderly people contributing their limited resources to help their peers, parents believing they were improving their children's schools. Camilla made one last, desperate attempt to control the narrative. You don't understand how difficult it is to run these organizations. The administrative costs are enormous, and sometimes you have to use creative accounting methods to make everything work. Her words hung in the air for a moment before William began laughing again. This time, several other people joined him. The absurdity of calling massive fraud creative accounting methods was too much for anyone to take seriously. "Creative accounting?" Thomas Mitchell said, his sadness turning to anger. "Is that what you call stealing money donated in memory of dead children?" Detective Morrison placed a gentle hand on Camilla's arm. "Ma'am, I really do need you to come with me now. You have the right to remain silent, and I strongly suggest you exercise that right until you can speak with a lawyer." As Camilla was led away, still protesting her innocence and claiming she could explain everything, the crowd began to disperse into smaller groups. People were crying, comforting each other, and trying to process what they had just witnessed. William found himself surrounded by board members, donors, and hospital staff who wanted to understand the full scope of what had happened. He spent the next 2 hours going through his evidence in detail, answering questions, and helping people understand how they had been deceived. Dr. Blake approached him as the evening was winding down. "William, I know this must have been incredibly difficult for you. You risked a lot by bringing this information forward." "Dr. Blake, I kept thinking about all the parents who donated money believing it would help their sick children," William replied. "They deserved to know the truth, no matter how painful it was." Margaret Foster joined their conversation. "What happens to the legitimate needs that people thought they were supporting? The hospital really does need a new pediatric wing, and there really are families struggling with medical bills." "That's something the community will have to figure out together," William said. "But at least now any future efforts will be based on honesty instead of lies." As William finally left the hotel that night, he reflected on how different the evening had turned out from what anyone had expected. People had come to celebrate their charitable accomplishments and ended up learning they had been systematically robbed. But there was something hopeful in how the community had reacted. Instead of turning on each other or becoming cynical about charitable giving, they had come together to seek truth and justice. The betrayal was devastating, but their response showed the same generosity of spirit that Camilla had exploited. 6 months later, William received an invitation to another charity gala. This time, it was organized by a new foundation created by many of the same people who had been deceived by Camilla. They had learned from their experience and implemented strict oversight procedures to ensure transparency. The invitation included a note from Thomas Mitchell. "We learned that good intentions aren't enough. We need good systems too. Thank you for having the courage to tell us the truth when we needed to hear it most." Camilla Thornton was eventually sentenced to 8 years in prison for her crimes across multiple organizations. The money she had stolen was largely gone, spent on luxury items and lifestyle expenses. But the legal proceedings helped other communities identify similar fraud schemes. Most importantly, the exposure of her crimes led to new regulations and oversight requirements for charitable organizations throughout the state. Future donors would have better protection, and legitimate charities would operate with greater transparency. William never sought recognition for his role in exposing the fraud, but he became known throughout the accounting community as someone willing to put truth ahead of personal convenience. His firm received several contracts to audit charitable organizations, work that William found deeply satisfying. The Children's Hospital eventually got its new pediatric wing, funded by donations from people who had learned the hard way about the importance of verifying how their money was used. The betrayal had been painful, but it had also taught the community valuable lessons about trust, verification, and the true meaning of charitable giving. As William often told people who asked about that night, sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply tell the truth, even when it's difficult, and even when people don't want to hear it. The laughter that had burst out of him wasn't mockery of Camilla's downfall, but joy at finally seeing honesty triumph over deception.